Hi, I'd like to start by sharing in what I heard a lot of people say at the conference this past week and saying thank you very much to Indiana University School of Social Work and everybody involved in making this conference happen. I think it was a wonderful event and really holds the potential to strengthen all of our programs and help us to come together to develop a unique vision of what online education can be for social work at the undergraduate and graduate level. So today, I thought that I would go ahead and do a recording of my seminar because the time just seemed to go so fast and we got sidetracked by a couple of different important issues, but I didn't feel like I was able to really fully get into the whole idea of institutional alignment. So that's the purpose of this presentation today, is to have a little discussion about what it's like to develop an online program at a traditional land-grant university. So my name is Patrick Shannon. I'm an associate professor and department chair of the Department of Social Work at the University of New Hampshire. And Trish Cox, who is not here for this presentation, was with us in Indiana to do the presentation. And she is our online MSW coordinator. I was able to hire Trish soon after launching our program. And we'll get into that when we talk about some resource issues and some other things about starting an online program. So let's get into it. The purpose of this presentation is to describe opportunities, challenges, and emergent strategies for aligning traditional land-grant university institutional systems to develop and launch an online program. Main point here is, how do you go about working within a bureaucratic institution to do something completely new that it's really not built for doing? That really was what this was all about. And it was quite a challenge and fun at times to pull off, but also very frustrating and difficult. And we'll talk about that process. We'll also talk about where we're at today. A little context. The University of New Hampshire is a traditional land-grant university. Its land grant was granted in 1866. Started out as a technical college. It is also a designated sea and space grant university, and of course, with any land grant institution, the primary mission is to foster an educated citizenry, and that's pretty similar for every state. But that's the purpose of land grant institutions. And an interesting side note about education in New Hampshire, higher education in New Hampshire, we're all struggling with budgets, shrinking budgets. New Hampshire is in a really unique state where there have been repeated attempts to withdraw all funding from the state, which in the end would jeopardize our land grant status. That is part of the reason for why we jumped into the online fray, is to make sure that we're sustainable. And part of that sustainability is serving both the people in New Hampshire, but also serving other parts of the country to make sure that we have a solid program with a solid financial foundation. UNH operates almost as a private institution. UNH is primarily a bricks and mortar institution. Instruction takes place in the classroom. There's a lot of university-wide faculty resistance to the whole idea of online education. UNH did have the foresight, though, in 2010 to recognize that whether we wanted it or not, universities are moving in this direction. So they created UNH Online, which is a part of academic affairs. And the intent of UNH Online was to create the infrastructure to support departments and colleges with taking their programs online. We are only the second program in the university to go online. The first program to go online was the business school with their MBA program, and it really wasn't they had a fully online option, but it was created really to be more of a flexible path program where students had the option to do their studies completely online or completely face-to-face, and they got to choose. I think what they discovered pretty quickly was it's a very difficult model to manage, because when you do that, it's very difficult to predict, especially faculty resources, but also it's hard to justify all the infrastructure you need to support online education if you only have one or two students. And in fact, in their first year, just as we were getting launched, they only had one student that chose to go fully online. I really consider us to be the first program to go fully online, because our program is fully online, 100%, with the exception of field. That's always a good point to make. Field is exactly the same as it's always been. But because we're fully online, and we also were dependent upon the structures in place at the university, whereas the business school had a lot of their own resources that they were able to draw upon. So they did a lot of their marketing on their own. A lot of the money that was invested in the program, they really wanted to be independent of the university, and in the end that caused them some challenges, some issues. As of yet, there are no other fully online programs, but there are departments moving in that direction. The Department of Education does have a hybrid program, and eventually I think they're hoping to have a fully online program. They're just kind of dipping their toes in the water a little more cautiously than we did. Surprisingly, the other one that looks like it'll probably be the next fully online program is Masters in Engineering, which they're in the process of planning that right now. Oh, so I'm sorry, I want to go back one slide here and just point out something that's good for context. When I talk about why it's important for our program to consider having an online component, the University of New Hampshire is right down here, right on the coast, right next to Portsmouth. And most of the population in New Hampshire is in this swath here, with a little bit here centered in Concord and Manchester. But from this point up, it is very rural, very, very rural. The drive from the northernmost part of the state to Durham is about 3.5 hours, 3 hours. It's a long drive. It's a difficult drive, especially when the weather's bad. This is the White Mountains all through here, so it's not an easy drive by any stretch. So I think that's really important for context to know where we are located here and why we think this is so important. So let's talk about that for a minute, and I'll try to get through this fairly quickly so that we can spend more time talking about institutional alignment. Why are we doing this? Why did we do this? There are a lot of different reasons. I think they fall into two general categories: viability, long-term viability, and justice, social justice. I think that any venture that we would engage in should have some justice component to it. So in terms of long-term viability, we've been seeing a trend over the past decade of decreasing in enrollments in our face-to-face programs. Again, really quickly, just for some context, the department has 3 different programs. We have our traditional program that has advanced standing and 2-year degree programs in Durham, our main campus. We also have an executive model program in Manchester, which is a 3-year part-time program where students take classes that run 6 to 8 weeks long, and the classes are all held on Friday night and Saturday. And then, of course, now we've added the online program, and I'll describe the structure of that in a minute. But I think that's important for context. So we've been seeing decreasing enrollments, and there are a lot of reasons for that. Certainly, the economy probably plays a role in there somewhere. But we also are located very close to a lot of MSW programs. We have all the programs in Southern Maine, University of New England and University of Southern Maine. And then the Boston area. We're only an hour north of Boston. So all the Boston schools and other schools around the state of Massachusetts are all within driving distance of the university. That certainly is an issue. We're also seeing with the proliferation of larger online programs that have more of a national scope, students that are looking at other programs. We're not the only game in town anymore. And I think we've been able to rest on that for all of our history, that we're the only MSW program in the state of New Hampshire. That's no longer the case. We have other programs that are in our small little state. So we saw this as a long-term viability issue. Students have also been asking for more online options. Not necessarily we want a fully online program, although we have had those requests. More about a little more flexibility in our programming, because we do have students that are driving a distance, and to have some courses that can be offered in other formats is not a bad thing. I think another reason is that in terms of viability is across all of our programs is venturing into the online world. You learn a lot about technology, specifically academic technology, and how to use it effectively in all classrooms, online, face-to-face. So I think that's an issue. Social workers don't like to talk about revenue, but source of revenue is an issue. As I mentioned, we're always under threat budget-wise. We have another conservative group of politicians in Concord that their proposed budget just came out that has $0 budgeted for the university system in New Hampshire, not just UNH, but for the whole system. We go through this routinely in New Hampshire. New Hampshire is traditionally a very independent state, and we move back and forth between more liberal governments and extremely conservative governments every 2 years sometimes. And we're in one of those cycles now where we have a very conservative legislature who really doesn't buy into the whole idea of public education. The other thing is that we thought about, we're going to have to do this anyway, so let's do this on our own terms now. Let us set the standards for the university. Let us set the standards for the field as well. Let's try to do this right, and let's do this on our terms. So those are some of the viability issues. Related to justice, a lot of this I heard in many of the other presentations. I think we're all kind of in the same place on many of these. Clearly, rural distance access is an important issue. We live in a rural state. There is no public transportation except along the seacoast of New Hampshire and then in some of our small cities like Manchester and Concord. The rest of the state, there isn't access. I think related to that too is when you look at individuals that have varying disabilities and access issues related to that, clearly is an issue. If you can't access the physical campus, there is no option for you in New Hampshire, at least that is offered through the university system. So that's a very big issue for us, and something that has been kind of left unchecked for a long time. So that is a big issue. Looking at multiple learning styles, and I think this cuts across all of our programs, I think, as well, is that moving away from the traditional didactic teacher-student relationship. I think we've all been working on that for quite some time. But once you get into the online environment, you can really see how it can be done in a much more efficient way using technology. It also creates some issues when you look at solely online course delivery. It also leaves out some of those potential learning styles. But cutting across our programs, it makes a lot of sense. I think the fourth bullet point here is something that really motivates our faculty, and that is the idea that we need to protect the availability of public higher education. We've been moving in a direction where there's much less public interest in funding public education. There is increasing competition from a lot of different private and for-profit institutions that are interested in getting into this game and looking at it as a profit-making venture. That we need to make sure that we do what we can to keep our programs solid in our public institutions in each state to protect public higher education, and that means offering it and higher education in as cost-efficient way as possible to keep costs as low as possible. And that's getting more and more challenging as public funding gets reduced. Controlling the escalating cost of education. In theory, this makes a lot of sense in that you can potentially offer online programs cheaper because you don't need to pay for all the bricks and mortar and all the other things that go along with a campus-based program. I think, of course, we all know that that's a little bit pie in the sky, that universities, one of the reasons why the cost of education is so high is that universities are very good at spreading the money around, spreading the revenue around, and doing things that promote the university's profile. So money comes in for online education. It doesn't mean that we're going to take a step and say, let's now reduce the cost of higher education for all of our students. Probably what it means is let's build a new stadium, let's enhance our library, let's put in some upgrades in our dining halls and our dorms to make sure that the attractability is high. Diversity, increasing diversity both for our faculty and for students in New Hampshire is a big issue. New Hampshire is a very homogeneous state. Close to 97% of the population is homogeneous. Bringing students in the classroom from other parts of the country, so geographic diversity, different cultures, race, ethnicity, is happening in our online classrooms, and I believe that that is strengthening the experience of our students. And I think the last one here is preparing MSWs for a changing world. Online practice is happening, especially as we kind of move into more of a global social work perspective. It makes a lot of sense if we want to be able to serve rural areas, if we want to be able to serve countries that don't have infrastructure. Preparing students to be able to do distance practice makes a lot of sense too. So it's happening again, whether we want it to or not. So let's get going here a little bit. Real quickly, I'll describe our program. We're small. We're purposely keeping our program small. We have no desire to be in competition to create a massive program. What we want to do is better serve our state and our region. So we have 3 cohorts per year. We want a number of 15 per cohort, so we accept 20 per cohort with the thought that we end up around 15, which is the way it's been going. We have 15 to 18 or 19 in each cohort. It is technically a it looks like a part-time program, but it is a full-time program, and I'll describe the structure of why. Students go through the program. They can complete the program in 28 months. And if they look really carefully at what we call our course carousel, there are some ways that they can speed it up and finish even sooner than that. The way the program is structured is we have 5 e-terms per year. Each e-term is 8 weeks long. There are 2 in the fall, so August to mid-October and mid-October to December, 2 in the spring, early January to mid-March and mid-March to early May, and then we have 1 summer e-term. Students take 2 courses per e-term if they want to follow our 28-month track. And at this point we have students all over the place. Most are in the full-time track, but we have many that are choosing to proceed at a different pace. Field begins at the start of their 4th e-term, so there's a several month lag before they start in field, which is not a bad thing. We start out with I think the first 2 courses are our intro policy course and our first human behavior in the social environment course. And then they don't begin practice until their 4th e-term, practice in field. Once we're fully up and running, which will be the end of next year, we'll have 7 cohorts in the program at all times. With the overlap with the first cohort is only 3 months, the summer e-term. But there will always be 7 cohorts running concurrently. So how are we managing the program? None of this was in place before the program started. The only position we got approval for was after we had our first cohort accepted. I served as the initial coordinator, got the program up and running, and managed the first 2 e-terms. And we were able to hire an online coordinator who started. So we began in January 2014, and the spring semester we were able to recruit for a coordinator and hired, and her name is Trish Cox, and she began in the end of June 2014. So we just recently hired an online field coordinator. As any of you that have been involved in this to this point, that's the biggest issue, is field, and I think that's where some of the conflict comes in. When you look at, if you think about competition, it's really happening in the field. It's something we've experienced here in New Hampshire for a long time, because we are so close to so many MSW programs. We are always, in a sense, competing for placement options with many MSW programs in our area, in our region. And then we also were able to hire a full-time administrative assistant the following fall. all that had to happen after we had accepted students in the program. It's kind of the way our university operates. The only funding that went into creating the program up front was I had some summer salary the first summer to create the program, which there's an advantage to that. For those of you that are in the process of getting ready to start, is to develop and design your program over the summer when everything doesn't have to be done by committee. It helps you to kind of get a lot of the infrastructure in place quickly, and then when people come back in the fall, then you can kind of update them on where the program is at, and then you spend the year tinkering and changing and modifying. But if we tried to do this starting in August, it would have taken 2 years to get anything accomplished. So this made it a lot faster and more convenient. So you're ready to go. The first decision you have to make is whether to use a vendor or not. And we went through several iterations of contracts with a couple vendors. I won't mention the vendors' names. And the university really wanted us to use a vendor, and we eventually said no. When we realized what was going to happen, and this was a personal decision, our faculty's personal decision, that we want to control. We wanted to create and design what we thought was the best thing to do. And there's some value in going into this as a blank slate. Not spending a whole lot of time seeing what everybody else is doing and how it's been done in the past, but thinking creatively and building something organically. And that's kind of how we did it. And now that we've been up and running, we're kind of going backwards a little bit more and saying, okay, here are some of our holes, and now we're looking at what all of you are doing out there to see how can we fix some of those problems, some of those holes. The con certainly to using a vendor is cost. Most of them want 50% of the revenues up front, meaning they take 50% off the top. The rest goes to the university. When we looked at the trickle down, we were going to get nothing. It would have been very difficult for us to advocate for the 3 positions I just mentioned if that had been the model that we had gone with, because the revenues would not have been there to support what we needed. The other thing is control. The vendors tend to want to control admissions. They want to control the number of cohorts. We went with 3. The first vendor we talked to wanted us to have 7 cohorts a year. We'd be starting a new cohort every 3 or 4 weeks. So that was a big problem for us. They also wanted to either control or have a say in hiring our instructors and hiring our adjuncts. A lot of those things we simply had no interest in doing. We wanted to do this on our own. The disadvantage, of course, is that a vendor takes care of all the grunt work up front, and from conception to start would be a lot faster, and things would move along a lot more quickly. So that was a big problem for us getting up and running, thus the whole topic of institutional alignment. We said no, and the university respected our decision because we were the ones willing to do this, to be the first to really do this. And it's worked out, I think, magnificently. Even with some of our bumps in the road, it's worked out very well for us. Okay, so let's get into getting this whole process started now. The first critical activity that's absolutely essential is to conduct a market analysis. And I don't mean this in the sense of a true marketing report where you're looking at students as consumers and looking at cost and revenues and all that stuff. No, it's really about looking at what should the structure of your program look like based on what's going on out there. How long is your program going to take to completion? Well, what are other people doing? Seems to contradict what I said a few minutes ago about doing it organically. But this is as we designed the curriculum organically and the structure of our program organically, and then we looked at this market analysis. But it was also focused a lot on what's your price point? How are you going to structure course fees and things like that? And what you'll see when you do that is almost to a school, every school is different, every university is different, every college is different. We're all over the place at this point. A lot of that's dependent upon our own institutions and our own state and funding streams and traditionally how things have been done. But it's really important to look at that. Look regionally. I think that's the most important because online, yes, the world is open to you, but really, I think the research is telling us that it's about regional awareness. That's where students are going to be going. They know you, they've heard of your program, they've heard of your school. If we're in New Hampshire, if there's somebody in northern Washington, they know nothing about who we are, and so they tend to think more in terms of close to home as well. So that's really important. The market analysis is really critical, which I'll reinforce at the end when I talk about recommendations. Really, really critical for advocating with your institution for what you need. If we hadn't done our market analysis, we wouldn't have been able to advocate for the positions we did. We wouldn't have been able to structure our course fees the way we did. We were able to tinker with our out-of-state tuition rates. So we'll get into that. A general note on process. I am a constructivist, and we engaged in a planning process that I kind of view as a hermeneutic process. The first thing we did was we developed a very strong relationship with UNH Online. They were absolutely essential and critical for getting this program up and running. They were our university shield and helped us to negotiate with everybody from the registrar, the library, the graduate school. They helped to facilitate this process. We learned a lot through this process. We started by forming this over the summer university-wide administrative group, and we met. Initially, we were meeting weekly, and then we moved it to monthly as more things began to be put in place. And it was an interesting group. It was something I had never been a part of before. The group was made up of the registrar, the director of financial aid, the director of business services, director of the graduate school, the dean of the graduate school, the library, the dean of the library, as well as a bunch of other people that were involved in all the different departments and divisions and that make up the university. And it was initially a very contentious group. Nobody wanted to do this because it meant a lot of work for everybody, so there was a lot of resistance. So we kind of took a hermeneutic approach that used our best empathic listening skills to look at what everybody else needed first. If we were going to create a new calendar, what were the implications of that? Who did we have to have on board, and what were their concerns about it? The same with the registrar. We're looking at changing the calendar, when people are going to be registering and how they're going to register, and what the new deadlines are going to be, and what are the new dates related to getting your money back if you withdraw from a class, and those types of things. We really started there, and the first half of the summer was focused on identifying all those issues, and then as a group we began to problem solve those issues. Before we really got into here's what we're going to propose, we knew what we wanted to propose, but we kind of held our cards in tight until we knew where everybody was, and then we began working each system as a group, and it worked out really well, where we ended up with a really healthy planning group. And having buy-in at that level was absolutely essential. There's no way we could have done it, and there were so many things along the way that could have shut us down with no way out. There still was a lot of resistance, as I mentioned, and something I learned personally is everybody says no, and they're going to say no, 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 until you get them to either say maybe or is it possible? Can we change our calendar? No, you can't. This is the way it's always been. Is it possible to change our calendar? Well, yes, it's possible. And then turning those maybes or possibles into actual problem solving. And that worked throughout the summer and into the fall, because our program launch was in January. That really worked, and we were able to get most everything done. And being social workers, of course, we, in every way we could, we shared and continue to share in the success with everybody else, give credit to everybody else, and not talk about that we did this, our department did this. It was really about the university coming together. Okay, so here's the beat of the presentation. What does institutional alignment really mean? Well, it means everything that your university does, all the systems that are in place to serve faculty, serve students, that serve very specific functions, making them all work for an online program. Because as we all know, everything has to change. Things are different. So I'll just go through these item by item, and I'm more than happy, by the way, to talk to anybody about anything that we experienced. I know that this isn't like probably all that unique an experience, and I don't have anything startlingly insightful to say. But helping to talk through some of these issues, and we did a little bit of that ourselves. We reached out to some other institutions and talked to them about how are you structuring your field, and what about your curriculum, and as we were kind of in, jumping off the high diving platform into the program. So let's start with a couple of really critical ones that surprisingly went pretty well. The first was course and fee structures. So with in-state students, there was really nothing we could do here. Anyone who is a state resident pays the same tuition that anyone else in the state would in any program, based on the university's designated tuition. But the fee structure is much different. Students only pay $44.50 per 6 credit hours. So the fee structure really reduces about $2,500 a year from the cost of in-state tuition and education. Referencing the market analysis report, we were able to make the argument that for out-of-state students, we had to reduce significantly. So at UNH, the in-state tuition rate is $750 per credit hour. The out-of-state rate is $11.75 a credit hour. We were able to negotiate 10% above the $750 a credit hour, so the tuition rate is $8.25 a credit hour for out-of-state students, and that was critical for us. And that really came from our looking at our region and who the other programs were that were online in our region. And we looked at, so we're a little bit below some, and we're just a little bit above, but we're right in the same ballpark with all of the New England regional programs. Again, not to create competition, it really is to create viability of our own program. That if we went in with the $11.75 credit hour rate, there was no way we could compete for any out-of-state students. And in New Hampshire, the in-state population is fairly small, and that was important for us to consider. Academic calendar. Initially, we were proposing a new calendar that included our e-terms, and we ended up withdrawing that after really seeing what some of the implications were for changing the calendar dramatically, even though it appears on the calendar that there are these e-terms. But in terms of all the traditional beginning of semester and end of semester and the different dates, critical dates along the way, we did not change those. And a lot of that is based on federal financial aid. That we can't change that. So that's one of the issues we're dealing with now, which I'll get to. So what we ended up doing was students, when they come in and say they're starting in August, they have to register like everybody else for the whole traditional academic term, even though they're registering for 2 e-terms. So they're registering for all 4 of their classes in August for e-term 1 and e-term 2. That means any need to withdraw from a class, any of those types of dates, and when you're, what's the last day to withdraw before you get a full refund or 75% refund or no refund, they have to follow the traditional academic year at this point. However, we have worked out with our business services office a more extensive waiver protocol, so that if there are issues that come up and someone registers for e-term 1 and they take those courses and then they realize it's a little bit too much for them and they only want to take 1, that it's a fairly easy thing for us to waive that process so that they can drop a course or drop both courses with no financial penalty. That was really important, and unfortunately we learned that with our first cohort pretty quickly that we needed to develop that. So financial aid, I mentioned, it is an issue. The issue for us is that the summer e-term is kind of in no man's land. How do they pay for it? Are they paying for it based on their financial aid for the upcoming year or for the year previous? We're still struggling with this issue and trying to work it out so that students don't end up having to pay more. As of right now, what they're having to do is take more courses in one of the other e-terms, which then potentially puts them into a credit hour overage, and so the cost we say they're paying may end up being more than that. So that's an issue. Business serving billing services and billing dates. Again, I think I covered that pretty well. That yes, we have to follow the traditional academic calendar, but we are able to negotiate with them for individual cases. So more globally, let's talk about student support services and faculty support. And here's where some of our issues have really shown themselves in the past year. The library. The library is, for the most part, functions very well. We're able to have embedded librarians to assist with students in courses. But there are some things that we can't really work around at this point, like books. That while the library is in the process of trying to digitize as much of their collection as they can, we're still very far from that being done. So right now there is no policy for a student who needs a book. The university won't pay for mailing it to them and mailing it back, so they can't access it. They have to try to access it some other way, and that's a real issue for us. Disability Student Services, DSS is what it's called here at UNH, is having some difficulties with online accessibility and getting students their accommodation letters in a timely way, speeding up the process. The 8-week courses, if you miss the first 2 weeks and don't have that letter, it's a big problem for a student if they need accommodations. And then you have to add to that the lag with getting something done for an accessibility option. That can be a real big issue for a student, and I think we're pretty much there at this point, but that's been a big issue. Information technology, and specifically support for students. This is still an issue that students have to try to access in traditional business hours, which you can deal with. Time zones is one issue, of course, but for the most part, you look at who your student population is in an online program. It's people that are working full time. It's people that don't have time during the day, and they can't cut out of work to go call IT because they're having a problem with a video loading. This is a big issue for us, and we're still working on this. There's been some compromise in adding hours, but not enough. Where our IT is not available nearly enough. That is a big issue. There's a global issue here that I'll talk about in the end, about our accounting system that creates some of these problems for us. Health services, online students are not eligible to pay the health services fee and have health insurance. Students that want to be full-time students, some of them do want our health insurance, and as of right now, the university does not have a policy to let them sign up for that insurance. That is an issue. And then there are issues elsewhere too. We still have some minor issues with registration periodically, where dates get a little confused. The calendar is not always very clear, and so there are things like that we're still dealing with. But we have the work group continuing. In fact, at the end of this semester, the spring semester, we are convening a half-day retreat to bring everybody back to the table again and really kind of look back and see how things have gone and what the issues have been, what else we still need to solve, and to problem solve some of those issues. Faculty support services. This I'll say this for both adjuncts as well as for full-time faculty. UNH considers itself it's a Research 1 institution, but considers itself also a teaching institution. So teaching support is very robust here on campus. We have something called the Teaching Excellence Center, which provides magnificent support for faculty. But as of yet, they're not really able to provide it online to online adjuncts. So this is another one of those things that we're working on this summer to try to help them to get some of their supports online. Support with academic technology. When I was doing the presentation in Indianapolis, this came up from a couple different people that academic technology is playing catch up just like we are. We started with no budget. We had to bring in students, demonstrate we were viable, and then the money comes after that. Well, our academic technology has been in a similar position. When we first started, they had, I think, just 2 instructional designers, and one was the director. Now they've been able to bring in some new instructional designers, and that process is going much more smoothly, but it's still not sufficient for helping individual faculty. As a faculty member comes on and for the first time teaching online, it's traumatic for everybody, but especially for someone who is either resistant or technophobic, having that help is essential. And it seems every term we get better, and they get better at supporting us, but we're still a long way from being really efficient there. Then the same issue with information technology that students have, we're having the same issue around support. And then just globally, supports for adjuncts is an issue. This is something that we've had to kind of do as a faculty, and this is one of our big areas of resource needs, that it's falling on faculty to provide things like mentoring. So for example, you're teaching, I wish I had a way to show you our course carousel, but by the time we get 7 cohorts in, we'll be teaching almost every course in our curriculum every single e-term. That means a lot more adjuncts to help us fill a lot of these courses, and we're spreading full-time faculty out across all of our programs so that we're all teaching it online in our Manchester program and our Durham program. But what's happening is, we have 3, 4, 5 new adjuncts coming on, say, teaching in the policy sequence. As of right now, the only way we can provide support to them is to assign individual faculty members who have taught those courses. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot of work. And it's work that we don't get compensated for, and it's work we don't get rewarded for when it comes to promotion and tenure. Big issue for us, as resource issue, and we're really, any advice anyone has on that issue, I would be more than welcome to hear. There are other supports for adjuncts too that are needed. A lot of the technology supports, so they go through what's called Fundamentals of Online Instruction, which are academic technology developed most of the modules, and we in the department developed the modules that are specific to our curriculum and our program, and that kind of stuff. But after they go through the fundamentals course, it's like starting over when they start in a course. Very challenging for them. And we have adjuncts, most of whom have taught for us for a long time, that are really struggling with it. Other support issues, developing courses, putting them online. We've been fortunate there that UNH Online has money available to pay us, each full-time faculty member, to convert the courses to online, including electives. And we've been able to even take some of our long-term adjuncts who've been teaching some of our electives and pay them to do it too. We get paid the equivalent of teaching a course, so $5,000 to $7,000 to develop the course, and that's been a nice bonus for all of us, nice benefit for us. But it also means that the entire curriculum has been developed by full-time faculty. While we're at a point now where we're going back and looking at the quality of the courses and looking at how to enhance them, and also how to create more fidelity in how the courses are delivered when you have different full-time faculty teaching a course and adjuncts added into that as well. Really critical issues to deal with. Moving on, marketing and communications. It's absolutely essential to develop a marketing plan. Again, I'm not I don't think that's something that we tend to really enjoy thinking about, but it's important. So our marketing strategy, we were able to do most of it, almost all of it, on our own in consultation with UNH Online. They had a marketing person assigned to them, and that person helped us to develop our social media. So our Facebook page, LinkedIn, YouTube channel, Twitter. We developed a new website just for the online program. Things like that really helped. Our marketing plan also includes other types of media. So, for example, advertising on NPR radio stations regionally, using things like Pandora when we're looking at states that maybe are outside of our region to launch Pandora ads, print ads as well, things like that. And again, we were doing it with a very, very limited budget, so a lot of it was dependent upon things like social media that we could do with little to no cost. I'll tell you that the advantage to this has been not just for our online program. The last 2 years, we've seen our largest BSW classes that we've ever had by 4 times, and I attribute that to the marketing efforts. We've never done marketing before. We've never said, "Hey, we're here, and this is what we do." Within the university, we are getting more and more students that are switching to social work, which is wonderful to see. So it's not just outside the university, it's within the university. We're getting more of our own deciding that social work is right for them. And a lot of that, if you have a chance to hear or see any of our ads, is really appealing to social justice themes, social justice issues, and getting people excited about social change. Financial support. I mentioned the financial support for courses. New technologies. We're in this constant process of evaluating what we're going to use now and in the future. So the university is exploring learning management systems. We currently use Blackboard, which any using Blackboard know it's pretty clunky and has a lot of functional issues. The university is in the process, which we're engaged with them on that, and looking at some other LMS options. Looking at other ways for enhancing connectedness with our students, other technologies that might help us there. Technologies for doing things like our online orientation, exploring online graduation, information sessions, online information sessions, really important, as well as faculty getting upgrades in technology themselves so that they're more functional. Faculty and staff training. We had the first year before we launched, or the first year after we launched, the university offers a thing called the Faculty Instructional Technology Institute every summer, and we were able to get our entire faculty signed up for that. So it was a week of intensive focus on academic technology, which was really helpful for everybody, but very costly. New faculty positions. We're in this constant cycle of requesting new positions. We have the EPOS 1 to 12 ratio in mind at all times, and making sure that we're continuing to meet that ratio. And so we've been able to kind of slowly kind of ramp up to that as we accept each new cohort. So next year we've asked for 2 new positions, and once we get those 2 new positions, we will be at the 1 to 12 ratio. We're at the 1 to 12 ratio now, but with 3 more cohorts next year, we won't be if we don't get those new faculty positions. And then simple things like that are university-wide issues. The university is just now piloting online course evaluations. And fortunately, it coincided with the launch of our program, so we've been the guinea pig for the university with online evaluations with our online students. We were the first ones to do it, and now it's being piloted with face-to-face classes as well. And I mentioned in the beginning, university-wide faculty support. There isn't any. In fact, I'd say there's outright resistance in many places. There are individual faculty members in every department around the university that are very supportive of it and quietly tell us how supportive they are. But there are, in terms of like departmental level support, and I sit on the faculty senate, And I hear it at Faculty Senate all the time. Wow, how this is just a disaster, and why are we doing this? And we got to stop this. And sometimes there's outright hostility towards us and the MBA program because we're putting pressure on the other departments to move forward with online programs. That's something that I think is changing and will continue to change, just like with any change. It takes time and it happens. Okay, getting into this, there's one thing to think about what you think the opportunities are up front. It's another thing to experience them. And I'll tell you, I'll say this more from my perspective, my own experience, as well as a little bit globally in terms of the program. I've found that teaching online courses and specifically developing online courses has really improved my own teaching. I tend to be a little organizationally challenged, and I miss details often. It really has allowed me to go through in a very detailed way all of my courses and think carefully about what every class session is about and link them directly to learning competencies. So the way we structure every one of our courses, we use Bloom's taxonomy of learning to start with a general statement about what's the overview of this module, and then to state specific learning objectives that are directly related to the competencies as spelled out in the syllabus. And then what's the content? So what are the readings? What are the maybe media that you're using to deliver content, as well as the lectures? And then how are people interacting with each other? How are they doing? How are they learning in terms of actually doing the work related to the module? So that might be discussion boards and group exercises and different interactive components. And then assessment. And the last part is how are you going about doing assessments? So in most cases it's traditional assignments, group projects, presentations, papers, that sort of thing. But it also helps you to kind of look and think a little bit more creatively too about how you're asking people to demonstrate competency. More exposure to, or expectations for people to maybe record their own videos, to engage in advocacy projects and report on how it went, what happened. Really, really important. So getting to the next thing, adding diversity in classrooms, I already mentioned, so I won't go over that again, but that has been a real opportunity for us and I think other states that are similar to New Hampshire to really think about this as an important part of what online can do for you. Looking at this as an opportunity to enhance all of your programs. And I think we were very good at doing this and thinking about this isn't just about developing a separate online program. This is about looking at how we can use this new environment to enhance programming for all of our programs. And I feel like we're really close to being really effective at doing that. We still have some issues, and some of them are some barriers, like for example that we're not allowing students to take courses across the different modalities in the program. So the executive model program, the Durham program, and the online program, except for electives. They can take any electives across the program. And that really has just come down to simply a resource issue. It's very difficult to predict faculty needs and other resource needs if we have to wait until people register for classes to find out where they land. So that's a big problem, and I heard from a couple other programs that they've also struggled with that issue. Regardless, though, again, I'll speak from my own experience that it's improved my classes. So I'm doing a lot more. I'm using Blackboard much more effectively. I'm using all the tools, the academic technology tools that are available that I hadn't used before, that I'm using in my face-to-face classrooms. A real simple one is there are no more snow days, and I can tell you we really needed it this past year. We had so much snow up here that I was able to either record new lectures or pull lectures that were already recorded from my online versions of the course and post a whole module. Say, hey, we weren't able to physically meet this week, but here's the module. So participate in the discussion. Here are the lectures. Here's the media that I would have shown you in class. Let's get it done. Really, really helpful. Getting into all the social media has really enhanced our alumni connections. Yes, we initially developed it for marketing purposes, but we also did it with the intent of switching over to building connectedness. And we still haven't figured out what the formula is here. And again, I heard several people talking about this in different presentations. What's the right formula? What's the right mix? How do you use the different platforms like Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Flickr and all these other things, and the 10,000 new ones that are going to be coming our way anytime. How do you use them in combination with each other to make people feel connected? Because right now it still feels very disjointed. But it has brought all of our students together in the same platforms. So we have a pretty active Facebook page. We have a pretty active LinkedIn group. And we have a pretty active Twitter. So it's really about knowing what the value added of each of those different medias is. So when I think about it conceptually, I think about Facebook as the community building tool. That's where you bring everybody together and begin to build your community. LinkedIn has a lot of professional development potential for connecting people in terms of helping them find jobs, helping employers to find employees, and doing different events with students and alumni together, connecting them in the same spaces. Twitter, I think, is a wonderful tool for call to action, to organize people quickly to act on something. So I participated in the Twitter conversation on Ferguson a few months ago. And had a lot of our students participating as well. And then I've started using more of that in the classroom, and it's been really wonderful to see students take to it and understand how to use it. Faculty are slower to come along with that, and I'm speaking for myself that I knew nothing about this either until I started doing it. It's not an easy thing for us to grasp and figure out how to do, but I think it's important not just to have these things, but to know how to use them effectively. But I still feel like we're missing something. There's this global connectedness piece that doesn't exist yet, and I don't know if that means that there's a need for some new type of platform that doesn't exist, something like Ning that we're looking at, but I'm not sure that that's going to meet our need either. And also doesn't involve students having to be connected to 10, 11, 12 different media types to be able to feel like they're connected at all with each other. It still feels very disjointed. The other advantage to that is that I think we all are talking the talk and trying to walk the walk of international social work. This allows us, these technologies, these medias allow us to connect in a much more meaningful and direct way with global social work communities that, again, we haven't been able to do in the past. Some of the bumps in the road, I'll try to speed it up for you a little bit here. Ensuring quality in all of our classes is a big issue. For full-time faculty, it's balancing academic freedom and fidelity. It's one thing to say we want faculty to be able to develop their own courses independently. It's a very different thing when you have one faculty member develop a course and then another faculty member, full-time faculty member, comes into that course and changes it all around. What's the balance between consistency and academic freedom? And we're having a lot of debates about this. One of the things that I've discovered is one of the values of this process is students, if we do this right, get to have the best of all of us. So I teach our intro to social welfare policy, and it's wonderful to have 3 different faculty. I'm using all of our lectures together because we all have different strengths, and students seem to be really enjoying that they're in the class and they're getting many different perspectives and many different not just perspectives but styles and how people do instruction. So that's been really, really helpful. But what's the balance there? The biggest issue, I think, probably for all of us is adjuncts. finding, training, mentoring, and managing adjuncts. This isn't just about, I don't mean that we're not staffing our programs with all adjuncts, but it does mean we have a lot more adjuncts. So we have adjuncts in all of our programs, and we just have a lot more of them now. And when we're looking for fidelity, we're looking for this consistency. They need help, they need support, and right now the only way we're able to really give that support is with a fundamentals class and then individual faculty willing to do the extra work, and that needs to change. But it needs to change to improve quality. It also needs to change so that faculty aren't overwhelmed. We still have to do our scholarship. We still have our other duties. It makes it very difficult. I mentioned EPOS, ensuring the 1 to 12 faculty to student ratio. So far we've been successful at doing that, and we need help from our college to make sure that we get new faculty positions to maintain that. Universal design, universal access related to accommodations, barriers for individuals with disabilities. Very resource intensive, and I think that it's real easy to say, oh, well, we can do closed captioning, just use the YouTube video and turn on closed captioning. Well, that's not accurate. It's only about 30% accurate. But it's about a lot more than just closed captioning. It's about faculty putting the time into transcripts of everything they present. It's about making sure that any video you show is closed caption. It's about making sure that any websites you're using are compatible with things like JAWS screen readers or alternate web navigation. So if someone can't use a mouse, can they use keyboard clicks? There's so many things like that, and they're also very resource intensive. And we're in the process of doing an audit of all of our classes and our overall program to make sure that we're compliant. And if we're not, making sure that we are compliant. And then just student issues, I mentioned most of them already, but continuing to have those student support issues around academic technology help, the library resources, and many, many, many other things that come up that are issues. Something I didn't mention earlier is looking at funding for your students. So as you all know, graduate education is expensive, and there's no federal financial aid available to students. So they're either taking out all loans or we're providing some support through our department. And we have very little support, but we do have some grant-funded projects. We do have graduate assistantships that can help with some of those issues, some of those financial issues. Making them available to all of our students, and that has been something that you would think would be an easy thing to do, but when you're looking at a faculty member choosing a graduate assistant, are they willing to work with an online student? Well, we've had to find faculty that were willing to help. With our grants, I'm on a grant that's funded by the Maternal and Child Health Bureau called the New Hampshire Leadership Education and Neurodevelopmental Disabilities Grant. And it's an interdisciplinary training grant for individuals that want to be leaders in the field of developmental disabilities. It has a strong campus component as well as a statewide focus, and that's what we're funded for. Technically, we can't accept a non-New Hampshire resident into the program. So if we have a student in Jersey, they can't apply for it because they're not a New Hampshire resident. And then even in New Hampshire, if we have someone that lives in the North Country and they apply, the expectations don't change. They still have to be at seminar. Well, we've been able to problem solve that, where we have some locations around the state where people can virtually link into seminar. But we can't do that for some of their clinical rotations. So they do rotations at some of the Dartmouth-Hitchcock Hospital specialty clinics. They might be in Manchester with community mental health services or the Medicaid system. They might be on the Seacoast working for some nonprofits. So we rotate them through a lot of different clinical placements, as well as some macro placements. That's been an issue, but we're doing our best to work with that. I won't talk about field issues. I think I heard many people talking about field issues. It is a big issue, and this is the one point where we truly are competing with each other. And And again, I don't think this isn't anything new. Certainly it isn't for us because of where we're located. We have so many programs that are in our backyard competing for our placements. And that's a big issue to solve for us, especially. And I say that like it's everybody else coming after us. Now we're out there trying to take placements away from other universities in other parts of the country. I think this is the field of social work wide issue that we need to find some common ground here and how to kind of play nice with each other and operate so that we meet the needs of students more than anything else, not the needs of our program. Creating a sense of connectedness between students and all programs and faculty. Already mentioned that, so I don't need to mention that again. The last thing I want to mention is resource-centered management. To me, this is the core issue that we face at this university. It's an accounting system, and the accounting system is based on fiscal units. So the fiscal unit for our department is the College of Health and Human Services. So any costs, any revenues that come into our department go through our cost center, which is the College of Health and Human Services. The money gets both spread out as well as asking for resources. We have to go into the whole college budget. So that's one piece of it here. So collaboration within the college is not so difficult because we're all in the same cost center. But when you look at how everything else operates in the university, what else we need, they're all different cost centers. So disability student services in the library. We have some interdisciplinary degree programs as well as graduate certificate programs. We need help from academic technology and information technology. We need help from the registrar. We need help from everybody. They're all in different cost centers, and there's very little incentive for them to kind of just step in and help us out. There's got to be a financial incentive for them to do that, which has made creating this seamless system very challenging for us. And the university is in the process of exploring an alternative to RCM. But again, change is slow. I don't see that happening in the near future. And in the meantime, we're in this position like when we need, say, here's an example, we're doing an online orientation and we need someone from IT to help us manage it, and we need to use their facility to conduct it. They either have to do it for nothing and have somebody there to help us when we're doing it at night, or we have to come up with the money and find a way to pay them, and the accounting structures are just not there. That's a big problem. Okay, last couple slides here. What are my recommendations? Conduct a market analysis. Use that report to leverage the resources you need. Use that report to project personnel material needs before you start the program. We were not able to do this, and it has made it very difficult to get things done. Secure that dedicated support before you launch. Hire that coordinator, hire that administrative assistant, get that IT person that you need before you launch. We've seen a couple other programs recently launch, and they launch in a very different way. You know when they had a year or two to develop their program and they had the people in place to do it, because everything is a lot more seamless. If you can do it, do it. Very important. We couldn't have done anything without very strong collaborative ties with UNH Online. And academic technology is part of UNH Online. We started with developing a shared vision for what this program was going to be. We also went into it with the attitude that we were developing the template for online education for the university, and that is how it is actually played out. I mentioned the MBA program. 2 years after they launched their program, they've now gone back and they're retooling their program to follow our model. They're following the same e-term schedule, the same way we're doing our billing, and not making it quite as flexible and easy for students to jump around. I think that's really critical. Defining who your student population is very clearly so you can anticipate their needs, and I think we did a good job of this as well. We knew that our students, based on who we see in Manchester and who we see in Durham, who they're going to be. They're going to be typically non-traditional older students who've been working for a while or career switchers, people that live rural. And so there are going to be some technology issues. We have to provide a lot of training up front for students, but also connection issues that there there are people that come into the program that are still using dial-up connections, and we have to be very clear with them that it's just not going to work. So helping them to identify maybe alternate sites, a library, or somewhere else where they can go and have a faster connection. And still, we run into issues here and there, old computers, things like that, that are issues. But that's really important. Developing a marketing plan and strategy for working with those students, also important. How do you reach them? How do you let them know that you're here and available? We found it in our state, as well as in bordering states like Maine, Vermont, and Massachusetts, NPR was a really effective strategy for raising the profile of our program. Maximizing the opportunities, looking at what those opportunities are and exploring how you can use this new modality to strengthen your whole program, all of your programs, is absolutely critical. And I think it makes it much more palatable for your faculty and for your university when you can improve all your programs. So marketing, for example, we're bringing more students in all of our programs because of the effort we put in marketing. Students are happier with the flexibility we've had. We've been able to expand our curriculum dramatically because of online, the online opportunities. So we've developed a lot of new electives that we've never been able to offer before. And so that's strengthening our whole program, our whole department. And the last thing is, as you're going through this process, do what social workers do best. Be empathetic, be nice. Start by developing those relationships with all the departments that you need to have on your side to help you through this process. It's absolutely essential, and you'll be amazed at what actually can happen, what you can get done. It's really interesting as we went through this process, thinking about the stories we heard about the business school taking a different approach was really interesting. That there was initially, I think, a lot less willingness to step in and help until they kind of went through and they struggled and stuff, and now they're kind of playing nice and working with everybody as well, and so they're getting done what they need to get done. But I think this is really important. I don't think I know I'm preaching to the choir here, and there's nothing I need to more to really say about that. Here's our contact information. As I said, I'm more than willing to talk to people at any time about this. I think it's important that we're working with each other and we try to make this work the best that we can to strengthen our profession, to help our students in any way we can, and to work together. So, let's solve that field issue. I think that's a big issue for all of us. So feel free to contact me anytime you want, and never give up, even when you want to. I didn't include references, citations in the presentation itself, but I thought you would probably like to see the lit review that did go into this, and I will be finishing up a paper that at some point will be available based on institutional alignment that should give you some more detail. And I'll say thank you, and I really hope we're able to do this again, and I look forward to seeing everybody again next year.